So we're going to get started today. And over the last several weeks, we've been looking at some communication principles. And we had a particular emphasis. We went about 3 weeks looking at questions, like the power of asking questions. And I trust you found some value with that. But for today, I'm curious if any of you have ever found yourself in a scenario where you wanted to ask a question, but maybe you felt nervous or afraid to ask that question. Has anybody ever done that? A few of you? Some of you are still sleeping. Okay. All right. So, um, I the note I have here is the Primanti story. So there was one time for work I had to bring an extended team of mine into the area. So they flew into Pittsburgh, and we were visiting different stores in the Pittsburgh market. And one day, because I had a bunch of people that had never been to Pittsburgh before, I said, well, you have to eat at Primanti Brothers. Any Primanti Brothers fans in here? Any Primanti Brothers pizza fans in here? Right? That's good stuff. That's good stuff. And so anyway, we go in, and this just came up as a Facebook memory because one of my colleagues who had come in shared a picture or something of that particular event and on Facebook. And I remember there was probably 8 or 10 of us that went in there. They put us in the corner booth. We were all sort of squished in there, and they pass out the menus. Now, those of you who are sophisticated enough to go to Primanti Brothers know that the choice that you make when you go into Primanti Brothers is not what's on the menu. The choice you make is what type of meat you want on the sandwich. Like if you decide to make it more difficult than that, you're doing it wrong. And so my colleague who was in town from Rhode Island started asking, I think she got up to a dozen questions about a Primanti sandwich. And I was just like done. I'm like, sweetheart, you pick the meat and we go. Like that's where we are. I didn't think it was possible to have that many questions about a Primanti sandwich, but she did. It just reminds me that there's times when people may discourage or even intimidate us in such a way that it prevents us from asking questions. And maybe we've witnessed that. Maybe we've been a part of that. In that particular story, I was trying to do I wasn't very good at it. Just as an aside, I was trying to, let's get the order in. We want to eat and be on our way here, right? It's an interesting scenario. Perhaps you've been in a meeting sometime, and the meeting, maybe it's not going all that well. And every question that comes up just seems to make the meeting drag longer. Has anybody been in one of those? Like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Like it's awful. As I was preparing, I thought, well, maybe we need to have a lesson on asking the right questions. 'Cause sometimes there's this old saying that there's no such thing as a stupid question. And this isn't biblical. This is purely my opinion, but I absolutely believe that there are stupid questions. I do. Maybe there isn't such a thing as a stupid question. Maybe there's only stupid people that ask questions. And that's probably not biblical either. So I'm sort of sleep deprived here. We might get a little excitable here this morning. So just be forewarned. Today's lesson was prompted by a mini lesson that was given to me earlier this week. And I think it makes sense for us to touch on it today in light of some different things that we have been looking at over the last several weeks. And I've titled this lesson, The Art of Asking. I don't know if I just sort of like the way that alliterates, but I don't know if that's really the best thing. But we need to be bold in how we pray. You've probably heard this verse, Matthew 7:7. Jesus tells us, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be opened for you. But what's interesting is the first word, ask. Ask. So, can any of you ever think of a time when maybe there was something that you wanted or you needed, but you just didn't ask for it? Like we probably can all identify scenarios like that. What about a time when there was something that you wanted or you needed and you did ask for it? We have those experiences in here. Yeah, we probably have some of those in here as well. There's an interesting piece of wisdom that goes something like this. It's like if you don't ask, the answer is always no. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. So Jesus modeled for us the power of asking. So I'd ask with you if you would, I'd ask you to turn with me to the Gospel of John, chapter 5. We're going to look at verses 1 through 9. It said, sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now, there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethsaida, in which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here, a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, and the paralyzed. One who had been there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I am trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." Then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat, and walk." And at once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. Now it's interesting. In this story, Jesus meets a man who'd been an invalid for 38 years. But before he heals him, what does he do? He asks him a question. He says, "Do you want to be made well?" And so why is it important that we ask? And I'll suggest to you that perhaps asking, because there's power in voicing our desires, and that becomes a step towards change. This is a little off, and I mean, hold on, it might be a wild one today, but like there's power in what you say. There's absolute power in what you say. And we get this modeled for us in Genesis chapter 1. God speaks, creation reacts, right? And so to that, I would give you this caution: be careful the words that you say. I made the mistake of making a claim one night at the dinner table. I don't care how difficult it is. Do not. Don't make that statement. You will find out what difficult looks like. You will, right? So anyway, but let's just take a little tour here, and I just want to look at some illustrations from the Bible on asking. We're going to go back to Matthew chapter 7. We're going to read the larger passage here, but Matthew chapter 7, verses 7 through 11. Jesus tells us, "Ask and it will be given to you; seek and you will find; knock and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks the door will be opened. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him?" Maybe just underline that ask. We are invited to ask, we are invited to seek, we are invited to knock. And Jesus just reminds us that it's the loving Father who gives the good gifts. Now, I'm going to tell a story about Jess here, if I may. It's a story about not asking, it's a story about assuming. When Jess was real little, Trace and I decided that we wanted to get him the Thomas wooden train set. We thought these will be rugged, these will be long lasting, this will be something we could use with our grandkids potentially. And Jess, like that little train barely fit in his hand, and like he had a white knuckle grip on that train. He wore the face off of that train. And so and Jess's birthday is actually what 11 days before Christmas. So he that time of year can be pretty exciting. It can probably also be really disappointing because it's all just stacked up at once. But it became what we would do is we would buy him new Thomas trains or track or whatever just to do that. We were so fired up about it. We were like, "Oh, this is wonderful." We had train track all over the living room. We could probably circle the living room with the train track that we had. And what I would do then is I would keep an eye out because every once in a while it would go on sale, go on special, go on clearance. I would pick something up throughout the year, so we would have this supply of Thomas. And then came Christmas morning. How old was he? He was 4. He was 4. So like he wouldn't go to bed without Thomas. I'm going to tell you, we actually bought him a second Thomas, one that did have a face. We couldn't fool him. He had to have the one. He had to have the faceless one to go to. Like that one was not satisfactory to try to go to bed. But yeah, he had turned 4. So we had been doing this for a couple of years now. And Christmas morning, we were so excited. We had all this stuff for him. Now we hadn't been asking him, "What do you want? What do you want for Christmas?" We assumed that he would just want more Thomas. And he opens up the first of what would be many gifts of Thomas. He opens up the first, and Thomas is for babies. Like, so, I wasn't a very good father in that story, but like I share that with you because there is such importance and there's such value that you get from asking. And I think we've talked about that, about just the power of asking questions over the last several weeks. But today, the encouragement is to actually do it. It's to actually ask. That's what I want you to be aware of today. James chapter 4, verses 2 and 3 reads, "You desire, but do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures." So a note that we could, and let me, did I put this one on the board? 1 John 5, 14 and 15. John tells us, "This is the confidence we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything according to His will, He hears us. And if we know that He hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have what we asked of Him." So there's the emphasis here that we need to ask in accordance to God's will. And maybe some of us need to ask a question before that, and that's to be aligned with God's will. Maybe that's something that we can take about that. So I want you just to take a moment and think about this, right? The Bible encourages us to ask God. All right. We good? All right. It's all good. The Bible encourages us to ask God. Yet, when it comes to asking others for things, be it help, be it support, and I'm just telling stories on myself here, like sometimes that gets tough. Anybody? I'm going to talk to the men first. Let me talk to the women first. Let me talk to the women first. Women, have you ever been traveling somewhere with your man and he's lost? Have you ever been there? Oh, yeah. Okay, well, Steve's not here to defend himself, but I believe it. I believe it, right? There's, women, have you ever seen your husbands struggle with asking? Men, is it possible? Is it possible that our wives have witnessed us struggle with asking? Yeah. Now, women, I don't know if you have trouble asking. I'm going to hazard a guess that you do. I'm going to hazard a guess. And I think that's interesting, that we probably all struggle with this asking. And I give you all of this to set the table for the lesson that I was taught again this week. I don't know that I've learned it. I think that I was taught it again this week because as I was preparing it, I'm like, I think I've taught a lesson similar to this in the last year. But you know me, I think we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. Imagine you have something. I don't know what that thing is, but just suppose you have something that could change someone's life. Maybe it's food, maybe it's a product, maybe it's a service, maybe it's a savior. Maybe you have some solution that would help somebody out. But we don't share that with someone else. Have you ever seen a scenario like that? I worked retail for a number of years, and I'm going to tell you that I've witnessed that. I've been a part of that. That it's just there's this challenge. Like I remember as I was in Mountaintop, not Tennessee, Mountaintop, Pennsylvania, out east, and was visiting a store out there, and I asked the staff in the store, hey, how was whatever going? And they said, oh, we don't ask people anymore. We know that they don't want it. Now, I don't remember what it was that we were supposed to be promoting at the time. We were supposed to be promoting something, but the idea was this, is that we knew more than somebody else, so we're not, I'm going to make the answer for you that you don't want this. And that's not necessarily true. But I think about that, and it was obvious in that scenario, but I think it translates to other experiences in life too. Have you ever gone to a restaurant and not been offered dessert? Yeah, there's times. It's like perhaps your server's just done with you. They don't, no more. I'm cutting you off. You're out of here, right? That's like there's something, right? You have something like that. So there's probably quite a list of things that we could make of things that we should ask about, but we don't for some reason. So this week, my mentor says to me, he says, Jess, I have a very short lesson for you. I'm going to give you guys the same lesson today. I've got a short lesson for you. Find your notebook. Okay? Find a blank page in your notebook. Do you have your blank page? Take your pen. We're going to start your notes. The note goes this. Ask. A-S-K. He even spelled it out. Made sure I didn't miss it. Ask. End of notes. That was the lesson. Ask. End of notes. A few weeks ago, I believe we looked at a principle that we call the law of cause and effect. It's something that I sprinkle in frequently. It's an important principle that we understand that there is a relationship between what we do, cause, and what happens, right? And I want you to understand this. Asking is a cause. If we don't ask, we get no cause. When we ask, it will produce an effect. Now, it may be positive or negative. There's times you can ask the wrong person for the right thing or the right thing from the wrong person and it doesn't work out, right? There is this relationship between asking and receiving. There is this relationship between asking and getting some type of result. Matthew chapter 20, verses 29 through 34. How am I doing time-wise here? I need somebody to keep me honest here at 10:30. I don't know how many times I've seen this lesson. I needed to see it one more time because I read it differently this time. Matthew chapter 20, verse 29. As Jesus and his disciples were leaving Jericho, a large crowd followed him. 2 blind men were sitting by the roadside. And when they heard that Jesus was going by, they shouted, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." The crowd rebuked them and told them to be quiet. But they shouted all the louder, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." Jesus stopped and called them. "What do you want me to do for you?" He asked. "Lord," they answered, "we want our sight." Jesus had compassion on them and touched their eyes. Immediately they received their sight and followed him. Now, I've heard this story. I don't know that I ever caught on that there were actually 2 guys in this story. I'm slow, right? What are the odds of 2 blind guys sitting next to each other outside of Jericho? That's where we are. But there's 2 blind men, and they hear that Jesus is passing by, so they cry out asking for mercy. And the crowd tries to silence them. But they keep asking. And Jesus stops and heals them. But understand, what started that process? What started the healing process for those 2 blind men? Asking. Asking started the healing process. And so point number 1 is asking starts the process. Let me flip the page. Oh my goodness. What is this? Just as an aside, I could not find this board this morning. It's typically down the hallway. I went down the hallway. There was no such board. There was a TV. I thought maybe I should just show a video. That would have been easy. But I went on a bit of a safari. I looked in pretty much every room in this building. Could not find this board. So I took a different board. And I had it in Pastor Steve's office. It was in there. It was a smaller board. I was okay with that. But as we were getting set up here, one of the Lauer boys brings it in. And I'm like, "Where on earth did you find that?" Because I could not find it anywhere. I broke into Trace's office. Wasn't in there. I mean, there's a key. There wasn't really breaking, but I was like, "Where on earth could this be?" But anyway, but obviously it had something to do with clips. So number 1 about asking. So number 1, asking starts the process. Process will not start if you do not ask. All right. Number 2, the supply is abundant. God isn't stingy, right? His resources are like an ocean and not a well that can run dry. Quote for you from a guy by the name of Thomas Troward. I believe he was a judge in the late 1800s. He said, "Where we are drawing from the infinite, we need never be afraid of taking more than our share." Let me read that for you again. Where we are drawing from the infinite, when we're drawing from God, we need never be afraid of taking more than our share. Just as an aside, who likes the Chuck Norris jokes? Anybody? Like Chuck Norris was once bitten by a snake, and after several agonizing days, the snake died. You've heard that one, right? I I caught one the other day, and it was Chuck Norris once counted to infinity twice, right? And I thought that's good, that's good. But think about that. When you think about infinite, when you think about the power and the abundance of God, like what's a share look like? I don't think it looks like anything. Ephesians chapter 3, verses 20 and 21. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably. What a wonderful word. Immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine. According to his power that is at work within us, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus through all generations forever and ever. Amen. Now, I'm not a big beach person, but I know some of you are. You like to go to the beach, you like to be there on the sand, you like to watch the waves, whatever. I don't get it. I don't. It takes me about 5 minutes is probably more than I need, in all honesty, right? But understand this. Don't show up for God's blessing at the ocean with a teaspoon. At least take a bucket. At least take a bucket. Number 3, clarity and faith matter. Clarity and faith. Vague hopes get vague results. Specific, faith-filled asking brings breakthroughs. Gospel of Mark, chapter 10, verse 46. We're going to go through 52. Then they came to Jericho. As Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, were leaving the city, a blind man, Bartimaeus, which means son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside begging. This is probably one of the two guys, right? This is a more specific story. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, "Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me." Many rebuked him and told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called to the blind man, "Cheer up, on your feet, he's calling you." Throwing his cloak aside, don't do that. Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped up to his feet and came to Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked him. The blind man said, "Rabbi, I want to see." Go, said Jesus, your faith has healed you. Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. Bartimaeus, a blind man, calls out to Jesus. Even though he's obviously blind, Jesus asks, "What do you want me to do for you?" Know this, God knows exactly what you want, but sometimes you have to be the one to say it. Hebrews 11:6. Without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists, and he rewards those who earnestly seek him. Have you ever asked for something in faith? This is an absurd example. Now, I'm going to tell you, I don't know what the security guys do. I don't know what their responsibilities are. I do know that sometimes they have interesting conversations. So in first service, as I was running around trying to find this board, I go by the security guys, and they're having a conversation about the best steak they had ever had. Gets my attention. I'm a fan of good steaks, right? One of my favorite places to get a steak is a place called Malone's in Lexington, Kentucky. If I could go have a steak at Malone's today, I would go. Like I drop everything. It is good eats. But what was interesting is that one of the times I was there, I was told that, well, hey, you can just buy steaks and take them home and grill them yourself. And I said, you can? I said, oh yeah, they do it all the time. They'll give you a cooler, they'll give you ice, whatever, because it's like a 7-hour drive from here to Lexington. I said, I'm doing it. Trace and I were there one year, and I said, what type of seasoning do you put on your steaks? And our server didn't know the answer. So he goes to the back and gets the grill master. You remember this? He comes out, and I said, sir, you do God's work here. And he does. Like it's some of the most holy meat you will ever find. It is just out of sight. And I said, tell me about how you season these steaks. And he sort of looks at me odd and he's like, we use salt and pepper. I ain't that sophisticated, right? So I said, ooh, that sounds good. Is there any way we could get some of this seasoning to take home with us? Because we're buying whatever we bought a certain number of steaks. And he's like, yeah. He sends out a styrofoam. It was a 16-ounce cup with a lid. It was just whatever mixture of salt and pepper that they used. But I'm going to tell you, like, I think that was holy salt and holy. I don't know. Like it was good stuff. We used that for a very long time. But I wouldn't have come home with that. Now I'm sure there's a ratio, whatever their special mixture is. But like it was really good. There was a time that we were at the Liberty Tree Tavern at Disney World. And whenever I was a kid, we went on a battlefield tour of Yorktown, and we stopped in some place nearby. And I remember my dad just raving over they had like tin cups that we had to drink from, and my dad's. If you were to put the cup, you take the tin cup and you put it in the freezer and get it cold, he just like somehow it tastes better that way. So we're at the Liberty Tree Tavern at Disney World, and they had tin cups. And so I said to the server, how can I get me some of these cups? I was expecting that they would come out, and because it's Disney World, they would tell me that they're like $19.95 a piece, whatever. They came back and they said, just take them. I wouldn't have received if I hadn't have asked, right? Now, I taught my dad this lesson. This is a lesson my mentor taught me. He taught me that the word TIPS is an acronym. And he said most people use this this wrong. He's like, when you go to a restaurant, TIPS is an acronym which means to ensure prompt service. All right. Now, I take my dad into the restaurant after he's had a colonoscopy. He's a little out of it. And we sit down at the table, and he says to the server, "Do you know what TIPS stands for?" And I'm like, "Oh, brother." If you ever have the opportunity to have dinner with my dad, be prepared to be made uncomfortable, right? But he likes to share that with the servers that he gets. He's like, "Do you know what TIPS stand for?" And then he'll give the definition. But what's interesting is after he gives that definition, the service that he gets is fantastic. It is fantastic. They take excellent care. Now, how would that happen if he hadn't asked? No, I think he could ask it in a little more polished and more sophisticated way than what he does. But there is something. You won't get good service if it's very possible that you won't get good service if you don't ask for it. So we need to recognize that asking starts the receiving process. We need to recognize that the supply is abundant, and that we also need to recognize that clarity and faith matter when it comes to asking. Now, that said, there are things that get in our way of asking, is there not? Pride can get in our way, right? We like, how many of us say, "I can do it myself"? Just me. Okay, thanks. Appreciate being hung out to dry there. No, I get it. Yeah, there's times where we think, "Oh, this is something I just need to do," right? Sometimes we don't ask because of fear. We're fear that we may be rejected or disappointed. Sometimes we don't ask because we don't have the clarity. Sometimes, just fighting for that clarity is a challenge. And there's sometimes we don't ask because we have doubt that we're gonna ask and it's not gonna make a difference. It's gonna be ignored. It won't. The request won't be answered. So what I want to encourage you to do is this. On that piece of paper where you took that important note of ask, beneath that, I want to encourage you to do this. I want to encourage you to write one thing you desire or that you need from God. Take 30 seconds, whatever it is. What is that? What is it that you desire or that you need from God? And then also, what's one area where you've been hesitant to ask for help? You may have one specific thing, but there may also be like one general area that. What are those things for you? Luke chapter 11, starting at verse 5, reads, "Then Jesus said to them, 'Suppose you have a friend, and you go to him at midnight and say, "Friend, lend me 3 loaves of bread. A friend of mine on a journey has come to me, and I have no food to offer him." And suppose the one inside answers, "Don't bother me. The door is already locked, and my children and I are in bed. I can't get up and give you anything." I tell you, even though he will not get up and give you the bread because of friendship, Yet because of your shameless audacity, he will surely get up and give you as much as you need. So I say to you, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks, the door will be opened. Jesus tells this parable of a persistent friend knocking at midnight. Now, I don't know what your definition of friend is. I don't know that I would call somebody a friend that just comes knocking at midnight, right? That's me. But the thing is that the man who knocks at midnight looking for bread, what does he leave with? He will leave with bread. And it's not because of friendship. It's because of his persistence. So maybe that's number 4. Persist. Luke chapter 18, verse 1. Then Jesus told his disciples a parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up. He said, in a certain town there was a judge who neither feared God nor cared what people thought. Wonder where that town is. And there was a widow in that town that kept coming to him with the plea, grant me justice against my adversary. For some time he refused, but finally he said to himself, even though I don't fear God or care what people think, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will see that she gets justice, so that she won't eventually come and attack me. And the Lord said, listen to what the unjust judge says. And will not God bring about justice for his chosen ones who cry out to him day and night? Will he keep putting them off? I tell you, he will see that they get justice and quickly. However, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? The parable of the persistent widow. She keeps coming to the unjust judge until she gets justice. And Jesus said, will not God bring about justice for his chosen ones who cry out to him day and night? Persistent. Persistence. God loves bold, faith-filled, persistent asking. And the door opens for those who knock and keep knocking. That's what I have prepared for you today. I'm going to put the 3 letters on the board. They're similar, not ASK, but ACT. Based on what we have learned here today, what action will you take? What change will you make? And is there something that you learned that you can teach to someone else for your benefit and for theirs? And that's where we will stop.